Welcome to the Agents of Aquarius. We are here today, gathered together once again to discuss all things in all facets of dimensions, levels, layers, the things in the light, the things in the dark. We're here to talk about it and try to understand it more. And hopefully you can learn and understand a little bit with us. If you have anything you can ever add to this, please visit us at Instagram at Agents of Aquarius, message us, and we will field your questions. Anything you think you need to tell us something, tell us. We need to bring in information that people feel compelled to bring, and we need to bring it into our psyches as well. That we being me, Jim Pine, my co-host Maddie D, and everyone that's listening. You never know how you could change the universe just from bringing us something a little bit too. And I pray that we're bringing you something at all times. So welcome everybody, and welcome to you, my humble brother.
How do, Jim Pine? Good to
Oh,
see you, brother.
I do well. Um, I feel I'm blessed, and I don't think we've ever done this before, but today is the greatest day of my life. So let's go with it.
It the best day ever?
Best day ever. It's the only day we got, so it's the best day we ever had. That's the way I look at it.
All
We
right.
don't have yesterday, and we don't have tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, since we talked last, since we've done this, we had a article. We were doing a break the news, and we kind of talked about protests and things of that nature, and all these different protests. One of them, I believe, the first one we brought up because we somehow got
Start talking about poo.
yeah, poo came up and somehow like went right into fertilizers and farmers bombing buildings in Europe with fertilizers because they were protesting their disagreement. They had a redress of the government, like, hey, this is BS, man. This isn't cool. And since that podcast, in the group reality, we have found that there's been concessions given. Is
Yeah,
that
it
correct?
worked.
Yeah, is that
The
correct?
protest worked. And one of the things that they got as a concession from the EU leadership is they scrapped this idea to have a 30% reduction in agriculture by 2030. Now, just the very fact that you got to fight for that is pretty wild, man. I mean, think about that for a second. You want in the next 6 years to reduce agriculture in Europe by 30%. In 6 years, there's nothing that's going to replace that. It's not going to come from somewhere else. That you're literally going to starve people. It's such an insane provision that it was there in the first place. It's no wonder that these guys took to the streets and they shut down their capitals and they dumped poo on the parliament buildings. And good for them. And good for them because they got some really big concessions, including this one of like, I don't deprive us of food. You don't think you'd have to ask, but there they did.
Yeah, well, that's once yeah, this is the clown upside down, inside out uh world that we live in. We live in a world where Jamie Farr in MASH was trying to get out. I won't even bring this up, forget it. We live in this clown world where, like, I saw this was a really good quote. Like, if when we were growing up, and
Uh-huh.
we did not even hear of any of these people, but you kind of maybe heard about it occasionally. People that got homeschooled, you'd be like, oh, they're weird. They're not
Oh yeah.
acclimated to society. And it's like, no, they just missed a whole programming that we had to take in every day. They missed a whole set of programming that they didn't have to take into, and they might not be a furry now. Maybe they survived the psyop of being a furry.
Well, they we thought of them as weird, but what they were lacking was a lot of consensus thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like we all think the same about a bunch of shit. You go to
Yeah.
you go watch the football game on Sunday and you party on the weekend and whatever it is. I mean, whatever consensus thinking is, there's two parties and you got to vote for one of them, whatever it is. So they're lacking a lot of consensus thinking that is drilled into people's heads through the education system. And we could beat that one to death because it's such an important topic that the fact that our very education system is an indoctrination system to think I don't want to say substandard because that's not right. It's just to think in a mundane way or something. There's something about the education system that just dulls the creative intellect.
It's we already know what it is. It's because we were told it over and over. It was like you're not being taught how to think, you're being taught what to think.
Yeah.
You know, the bell rings, you move, you take your break, you go have lunch when they tell you to have lunch, you get a bathroom break when you ask for one. You don't get to just get up in class and go pee. You have to ask for that.
Hmm.
And there was no mental place where you could be like, if you were smart enough, you could be like, I'm having a rough day, and you could go to the nurse and she would like let you hang out there. I guess.
I did that once with a hangover. It
I
worked
think
great,
I've done it once also. Yeah, I
but
believe I did it
once,
once.
only
Yeah.
once.
Well, I was really indoctrinated. You're also blurry, but I was really indoctrinated. And that's because we sat in a system. Could you imagine how like imagine if school was only 4 hours,
Hmm.
and imagine if they taught you real world skills to become a critical thinker, and maybe they allow everyone to go off in their own little areas and do what they are really into doing and see what happens. The artists become really artsy. People into numbers and math are really into like figuring
Hmm.
out math and understanding how the math relates to the universe, and so on and so forth. And think about what a better society this would be, instead of like just forcing people into this system of indoctrination that was paid for by private companies and government funded, but not fully. Like it's also done by these private entities that then introduced what our system should be of education. And just look where it's gotten us.
Oh yeah. No, man, that was well put because and a great question too. Where did it get us? Yeah, a largely
Furries,
unhappy populace.
furries.
Dude, if furry is where your joy is, man, get your furry on.
But
Um,
but to have the whole world concede to you pretending you're a cat, or having a whole world, the whole world has to change for you, is absurd and doesn't work in the real world.
oh
But
yeah,
they
that's
started it with these indoctrination systems that are like, no, we'll allow it. We're allowing everything. And it's like, how far does this go? Oh, minor attracted persons, dude. That's how far it goes. Like
that's
they
how
can,
far it's gone so far.
yeah, they can make your thoughts um so broken that you will just be like, yeah, everybody's included. It's like, wow, like I believe in free will up to a point, until your free will is like going over the line on other people's
Yeah, yeah,
reality.
that's why we fall
Yeah.
back on those little phrases like harm no one and then do whatever you want. But you
Yes.
got to lead with the other one. It doesn't go the other way around. Do what you want and harm no one. No, no, it's the priority here is harm no one first, then do whatever you want.
And harm's a really difficult. This isn't easy. Like, what is harm? What is harm?
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
tough one because nowadays words are
yes.
weapons, where for us it was sticks and stones were
Yes.
weapons.
Exactly. Like, yeah, you can't do violence. You can't do physical violence onto somebody. This proposed, which is true, there is mental violence you can do to people. And that's not okay either. It's not okay to just go outside somebody's house and just blare speakers because your freedom of will. Like, no, you're now violating other people's freedoms. Well, how loud can they get, Jim? And it'd be like, well, that's a case by case study.
Hmm.
Like, how much are you violating other people? Like, are you in the woods and nobody can hear you? Or like, and when I mean nobody, meaning nobody within 30 feet, there's nobody within 50 feet, there's nobody within 100 feet. Like me and you got in a debate once because you're not supposed to like, yell at national parks or something like this.
Yes,
You're not
yes.
supposed to like make noise. You shouldn't
Now,
hoot,
in just
holler.
wilderness in general, there's this idea that you shouldn't be on the mountaintop and holler.
Yeah.
And just to be 100% clear, the last time I stood on a mountaintop and hollered, it felt great. Felt so good. And I literally got chastised when I got down off that mountain. There was two people at the bottom of the trail, and it was the morning, like my friend and I camped the night before, and I woke up with the sun, and the sun was up a little bit, and I was standing on a cliff thousands of feet above the forest around me and just woo, loved it. And 3 hours later, I'm hitting the trailhead, getting to my car, And there's someone there like, was that you yelling earlier? Yeah, it was. You know, you're not supposed to yell from that time. Yeah, I do. And they had nothing else to say because we'd said it all.
I don't know that you're not allowed to. So
No, it's not that you're not allowed to. There's no law that says
no,
you
I
can't.
understand. No,
Yeah.
but these people, they spoke to you in a way that it's like it's a law and you're not, you can't. This is
Right.
this is an
Right.
unwritten law and you broke it. Like, do you know that
Uh-huh.
you're not supposed to do this? It's like,
Yeah.
you know what I also did? I made a Karen on the way down. Ooh.
No, but you know, and there's the two sides of this are super obvious. It's like, hey, maybe some people want to be out for the peace and quiet of the wilderness. That's great too. But the other side is you're going to inhibit someone from letting their soul rip free from their chest and just feel so good for those seconds. Maybe the one's more important than the other is what I think. I really think your need for silence can be interrupted. Fuck that.
I would say if you are just yelling, you wake up in the morning, it's 5:30, the sun has crested the mountain, 6, whatever. And the sun's crested the mountain, and you feel the light all night is there's a chill. There's a dark chill. The light is cold. It's not hot. And then there's this thing happens, and that light hits your body, and you don't think a Native American, an Apache Indian didn't also wake up at times and just rejoice in the fact that I woke up today and I'm here on this beautiful planet and I see you and can you hear me? Can you hear me, God? I don't see anything wrong with that. I think
Yeah.
anybody that would go to the counter is bitter. They're angry. And guess what? Free will isn't that everybody needs to be quiet because you want peace and quiet. Okay.
Mhm.
I think you're allowed to make a noise. Are you going to yell at the hawk because he made noise?
Mhm.
Go. Is the hawk in trouble because he disturbed your peace and your quiet? Or are you bitter? Like, that's the
No,
only I
this
can
is
say.
that person's problem.
Yeah,
It's not
no.
it should have nothing to do with the hawk. It's that person's problem. No, so roll this back with me for just a second because we were tracking on this idea that, you know, words are um, harmful.
Well, what is violence? Yes.
What is violence? Yeah, thank you for clarifying it that way because for you and I growing up, violence was the sticks and the stones or the beating on the schoolyard or whatever. But now violence is words, and that's really open to debate simply because the wound is subjective. If I punch you in the face, anyone can see the black eye. But if I say harmful words to you, it might not do anything to you, but it might do something to someone else. You know, again, it's a subjective experience. The fact that we as a culture used to be a little more willing to, for lack of a better way to put it, suck it up and take it, um, and get over it. There's an unwillingness to do that now, and that's where I lean towards this idea that it's better to let people shout from the mountaintop than to shush everybody. And I think it's better that we have the ability to speak freely in spite of the fact that it may cause some people pain. I think it's just more important that people speak freely and let their soul rip sometimes and let it out than to have to be constrained by the possibility that someone's sensitive to your words.
Yeah, it seems like a them problem to me. Like,
It is.
now it's case by case because right now people are going to be watching this, and then they're going to be running some type of they're going to be running a program in their mind, like, well, what about this? What about this? It's like, listen, yeah, it's okay to shout from the mountaintop. Nobody wants to hear you shout from the mountaintop for 5 hours straight. Okay, like,
Sure. Yeah.
so like it's a case by case. I think you ask yourself in your heart, and then you can also just see, like, how bitter are you that you think you get to control the whole universe, and uh you get to control this whole universe. Like, everything has to be like,
Is it
what
bitterness or just entitlement?
it can be both. It doesn't have to be or. It can be
Mhm.
and. It could be entitlement. It could be just somebody's living a miserable life. They're having a miserable life. Maybe they have cancer and they just wanted some peace and freaking quiet.
Mhm.
And they work a job that they hate and they just want to go out and they just want peace and quiet. And I would suggest to them as a mental exercise for that person that you met, maybe relish in the fact when you hear somebody yell occasionally from a mountaintop,
Mhm.
think, wow, what experience are they having that they are
Mm.
just like, I see you, God. Like, I don't know if you see me. Can you hear me, God? Can you hear me? And you release a primal noise, a vibration and a frequency. So if he can't see, if maybe you don't know if you're being seen, it's like, well, I'm going to reach out with some other vibrations that are beyond sight, and maybe you can hear me.
Mm.
Can you hear me, God? I see you, son.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that person who hears that yell, it'd be a damn shame if it upset them, but you know what? It might. However, however, the yell that I did on that mountaintop, this whole shit lasted 10 seconds,
Yeah,
maybe another 10 with the echo and the reverberation. So someone could have got over it in 20 seconds. Now you look at an animal in the animal kingdom, and the gazelle gets chased by the lion. It freaks out, adrenaline, rah, 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 runs, runs, runs. And then once it gets away, the animal chills out. In 10 or 15 minutes, the thing's just grazing like it was before, and you'd never know it just had this near death experience where it's chased by a lion because it's gone and corrected itself. Now, wouldn't it be a thing if we could learn in our school how to do something with your mind other than be perpetually angered for your whole morning because some asshole on the mountaintop had to yell at God?
yeah,
Like, there's a skill that can be taught that no one even considers to put into school. Like this idea of how do you work with your own mind? How do you prevent yourself from going into a mental rut where you just keep running the same rabbit run of discontent because someone was yelling something that you didn't agree with? Like there's something your school should be doing for you. But
yeah.
that's
Just
critical thinking.
and think you didn't even yell probably like any real. You may have spoken in a language, but they found it to be okay. I'm putting myself on them to understand the whole situation, but I think I'm probably doing a good job. They found what you were doing to be offensive. And the
Mhm.
crazy thing was you didn't use any type of offensive language.
No, no, there were no words
You weren't
spoken, not
using,
English. Like you said, there was
yeah,
language of the soul or something, but
there
not.
was noise. There
Yeah.
was noise and frequency to what you did. And think they placed offensiveness on your noise and your frequency when
Hmm.
your noise and frequency didn't come from any type of uh uh
It didn't come from any negativity, I'll tell you
yeah,
that. It was
yeah.
exhilaration all the way.
And this thing all comes up because I literally did it. And then you guys were like, well, you're not really supposed to make noise in
Oh
nature.
yeah, you'd said we had debated this thing about and like
That's
my
how this came
specialty, I
up.
cut you off like a champ,
No, you
because I
didn't.
always cut you off, but
No, we're here
it's
now.
just,
We are here now. We're
we're
back
here
where
now.
yeah.
But you had gone there though. You did quite literally say we had this debate about yelling in the wilderness. How did that conversation go at that time? Because
We were on a bunch of mushrooms we had
uh-huh.
taken. When I say on, I don't mean we're sitting on a couple pounds of mushrooms. I'm saying we'd taken a lot of mushrooms. There was three of us, and I got what I would describe only as the feeling you probably had, something very similar. And it's like like, you know what? I could feel you. I could see you.
Hmm.
I don't know if you could feel or see me, but can you hear me? Because our voices are so powerful, like sound is such a powerful frequency,
And
negative
you
and
were
positive.
addressing, I assume, like the universe or God or something, not just the
I
two
gave out
clowns next to you.
no, there was no clowns next to me. There was two
Well, you
people
said
that
there's
were,
three of us.
well, there were two people on mushrooms also with me, but I'm saying at that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so powerful. I am in the middle of such a powerful experience and such a powerful, oh my, and
Where
that's what
where were was I there or was it?
yeah, it was me, you, and Al. And we were on that mushroom trip, which I turned into a comedian from. And
Oh, oh,
it was that
oh, that
experience.
Al. Yes, yes. Okay, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
howl?
I
that
howled. I just did an and because I was like I felt so in tune, and then it was like, whoa, well, I'm getting yelled at right now. Like what? Like what?
well, all right.
No,
We
no,
probably
no. It's
shouldn't have
none of
yelled
it
at you, but
matters.
we were at a campsite with
Nobody was really
campers.
around. Yeah, but they were so far away, and there were so few campers, and
No, they were
we're in the
100
desert,
feet away, or maybe 150 feet away.
100 yards. But whatever. The thing was, like, I get it, but like, I just did it once. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the same thing. Like sometimes we should be able to just give a scream. I can go walk downtown San Diego, and I'm gonna tell you right now, society might not like it, but it's those people are down there are doing zombie crawl, screaming, yelling, and like movements, a lot of body. They're doing a lot of like jazzercise, acrobatic movements of absolute chaos. While it seems like they have several demons attached to them, to their each leg, their back, and maybe some of their arms and their head, and just it's like, okay, dude, you can do it for a second, but how long do we can do this?
Fair. No, that's an intense situation in the downtown sometimes.
I would like to.
But your thing about the three pals and the mushrooms, Al and I might have got weird about that because one, we had a really large dose of mushrooms still coursing through our blood.
Mhm.
Or two, we were coming down from a really large dose of mushrooms coursing through our blood, and we are a heightened sensitivity.
Yes,
But
and you
I
weren't
think
wrong. It just affected me because I hadn't thought like you can't just yell out. That's my whole point. Not that I'm right or wrong, not that you're right or wrong.
no,
Um,
I made a judgment call on this. I'm going out on a limb and I'm saying it is wrong to inhibit someone like you from letting that noise rip from your chest so that you could get closer to whatever creator you have. I mean that
that's it.
I'm making the judgment call and saying you're entitled to let that hell rip. And I'll take it a step further and say, yeah, you're not doing it for 5 hours. You just let that one go. And I think us collectively as civilized people need to loosen up that mentality a little bit sometimes and let people have their one or two howls
Let
and
people, yeah,
not be
let
so
people
uptight,
release. Let
not
people
be so uptight.
release. Yeah,
I don't
let
want
people
them
say
releasing
craziness.
all night downtown as in a fucking manic episode of demonic possession.
They
That's not
don't
what I'm
either.
saying. Yeah,
They
they
don't
don't want
want
it either.
that.
Yeah.
We don't want that. Nobody wants it. So that's why you got to police yourselves. That's why there is no rule we're creating here. We're not saying there's a law. Case by case. Where are you? Because we weren't like, you're like, oh, there's people, campsite, whatever, however far distance away. But it was like, you're not at your house.
Yeah.
You're not like in a
Right.
neighborhood. You're not in a subdivision screaming at 2 a.m,
No,
And it
we're in
wasn't, it
like
wasn't,
mountainous desert,
and it
and there
was
happened to be a
daytime.
campsite there.
Yeah, there was light in the air when that happened. But it's just the extremes to these things. Like, I'm going to use this as a comical extreme instead of the political, racial, homophobic extreme or some weird extreme like that. I'm going to make the comical extreme. I feel in the wrong moment, if those people that got mad at you for yelling, I'm gonna extrapolate this out and say if they were even in a more negative space, I could see, because when if you go hiking, a lot of the time they're like, don't go off trail.
Mhm.
And it's okay to go a little off trail.
No,
Okay.
no, it's okay to go all the way off trail.
Okay, there
But
you
that's
go.
another topic of conversation. Keep
Another
going with
topic
your thought.
conversation. But in these places where some places it's a very protected environment, and they ask you to not go off trail at all. Okay.
That's correct, right?
Okay.
That makes sense
There's
because you're
extremes to it. Yes.
yeah,
I'm not
not in the
against it.
middle of fucking woods of the Rocky Mountains though. But I got your point. Please continue.
And it goes all the way into suburbs where it's like, don't come on my area either.
Mhm.
Like, it's like, okay, this is interesting. There's nature where nobody owns. I'm like, don't. I could see those people being so bitter that they could see a lion. Okay, because this was in Colorado where your story happened. They could see a mountain lion chasing a deer, and they'd be like, "Oh my god, look how much they're disturbing the environment." As they're like kicking up dirt and like trampled a sage bush and ran
That's why
over.
you can go off trail and should if you feel safe, because the herd of elk rolls through a section of forest and it's going to leave a lot more prints than your little sneakers are going to leave behind. Your rubber soled sneakers. Trust me, the elk herd does a whole lot more.
be respectful. I think that's what it comes down to. I think we all have an inner voice, and if we would be quiet down enough, you could listen to the true inner voice that is nature and is also your inner voice. It's the same thing at the same time, and you would find it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, it
Eh,
is. And I swear I'm not going to contradict you by this little story, but I was hiking with friends
It sounds like you're
out.
about to contradict me, but continue.
Maybe
I'm
so.
kidding.
We'll
I'm kidding.
find
No,
out.
no, go, go, go. I'm
But
kidding.
yeah, we're hiking outside of Lake Tahoe. It's a hot summer day. It's bone fucking dry, and we're literally hiking up a mountainside. And there's a fallen tree in the ground, and it's half decayed. And one of my friends starts to stomp the shit out of this fucking log. He's like, rah, rah, he's just stamping the shit out of it. Now, look, I love the guy for all the good reasons, but he's an angry person. I get it. He lives in the world. And I'm looking at him and he's just like stomping the shit out of this fallen tree and breaking up into smaller and smaller pieces. And I was like, good for you, bro. Just let it rip, because you know what? We're actually not on a trail. We're going up a mountainside, up an open face. And here's this tree, and you what? Add a little more entropy into a system that is an equal balance of growth and entropy anyway, and you stomp the shit out of the tree. I thought it was great. It was like someone yelling from the mountaintop. And the only thing that happened was this decaying log decayed a little faster. But I loved it. I loved it. I was big. It was so. It's like, oh, don't walk off trail. Don't disturb the natural order. It's like, no, we're part of the natural order. We're here. You can't deny we're here because we've changed the shape, the face of the earth. And I just think it's so silly when someone's like, don't walk off trail. It's like, no, you're fine. Go ahead and walk off trail. It's like, how about this? Don't cut the switchbacks because you made a new trail that causes erosion that degrades the trail that's there initially. Like, that makes some logical sense to me.
It
You have a
can.
trail,
It
don't
can.
degrade the trail by cutting the switchback. Fine, that makes sense. But to not go off the trail, I find really, really bizarre that people think that way. It's like, you need to limit a human's ability to walk in nature because you want to maintain a view from the trail. But from the trail, you're just looking at it. When you get off the trail and you walk through it, you're now engaging way more directly with the nature that you're looking at previously. It's like, trust me, get off the trail. It's fine. Go ahead and stomp your log. It's fine. It's not making the world a worse place. It's just a shout from the mountaintop.
And you know what? Cut the switchbacks too, because in the whole scheme of life, it's all okay. Like if we're going to be worried about that trail was headed up there, then why is there even a trail? Cut the switchbacks, make the trail bigger. This is okay. It's all okay. If you find it in your heart and you do not, if you can be in communication with nature, that's probably the first place you want to be connected to. And then go from there. If you can use your intuition and cut switchbacks, then just do it. It's none of that even matters either.
You know what? Good. Good.
You know
Thank you.
what?
And I've said before, well, go ahead. You said, you know what? What's
Well, no, because life is the mountain, or life can be the mountain. And
it doesn't have to be the trail, even if your education system wants you to think it is.
yeah, too often we believe that we have to, especially in ours, the polite society we live in. It's like, well, don't leave the trail because it's like, bro, there's more space between the atoms in my face than, like, we are a collection of light and vibration that's come together to take some type of form in this dimension. Same as the plant is a collection of light and energy and frequency that's taken place in this dimension to become the sagebush. And we think we're separate. There's Matt and then there's the sagebush. It's no, because that's how this goes. Like if you can think about it deeply, and that doesn't mean like you can just go do horrible things in the world. I said this all with like, be connected to nature, be connected to your intuition, and I think you can cut switchbacks when that voice speaks to you. I think it's all okay, because that's the
I
same
love it.
people that would say that, or say don't make cairns, don't do this, don't, just let people stack rocks.
Because anyone who doesn't know, that's what a cairn is. It's just a trail marker of rocks stacked up.
And it's kind of really, I find it to be actually a bit spiritual when I see them. Because it's the implication, not like the trail is an implication that other things have been here because
Mhm.
there's a trail. So
Yeah.
things have created and kept this trail and stomped the grass and made the things go away. So it's not on the trail and you can travel the trail. But those cairns are like a little sign that says, I was here, without carving or destroying the world. Cause you can take those cairns and just gently brush them and they fall down into
Mhm.
creation again and just spread themselves out. And they just become rocks on the ground instead of a stacked formation. And if you went by a group of rocks laying on the ground that aren't in a formation of a cairn, you wouldn't think, wow, somebody's been here. But you should, because you're on a trail.
Yeah, well, I mean, the cairn is there for when the trail is hard to see. It's the trail without a trail.
And it's a sign that, hey, I've been here. Without
Yeah.
carving in a rock. You're not carving a rock. You're not doing this or doing that. It's I don't know. We've really uh like right off the side. We went from poop
And farmer protests.
farmer protests. There's and we didn't even do the break the news. We didn't even
Great.
do that. We just
Well,
jumped into break the news. Oh, we
well,
didn't even really
look,
do a break
great.
the news.
The conversation's been great to begin with.
Yeah.
Let me be so bold as to close this bit of our conversation with a paraphrase of Edward Abbey, that fantastic wilderness writer. Um, he was traveling with some people in their Jeep heading for who knows where in the Utah wilderness, and there someone in the Jeep complained about the beer cans on the side of the road because this is the 60s or 70s or whatever it was. Like, oh God, I hate these beer cans on the side of the road. As he was about to fling his beer can out of his truck onto the side of the road, and it's like, Edward Abbey, you're this wilderness defender. He's like, give me a break about the cans on the side of the road. The road itself is the most gigantic scar through the pristine wilderness that you could ever conceive. And he's like, don't worry about the cans because you're missing the much bigger insult. And any talk about like cutting switchbacks or any of that crap, it's like, don't worry about the trail. Don't worry about going off the trail, because the trail itself is scarring the wilderness. Once you understand that, then you stop worrying about cutting the switchbacks. And I know I just defended cutting the switchbacks, but I'm going to go ahead and concede to your point that there's a bigger story than cutting a switchback.
You'd already conceded that point and saw the depth of the argument, not the argument, the depth of the ideas. And Edward Abbey sounds like an amazing person that's experienced an amazing life.
Mhm.
Just like all of us with trials, tribulations. And the trials and the tribulations are literally, they feel more intense when we're not connected to nature, when we're not connected to our intuition. And you, when walking the mountain,
Mhm.
walk your path, walk your
Beautiful.
path.
All right. Change
So
it up for me,
that's
Mr. Pine.
that's the close of that. I have like, well, as much as you and I come in and people could look at these videos and be like, wow, they must have done a lot of pre-interview talk to like just go on the things they just talked about. And they would be wrong only in depth of time, because we don't spend much time talking about the show before the show. A lot of this, almost all of this, except for a couple key points we'll have written down, like behind the scenes. Here you are, episode 20, dude. We're on the 2L. I'm going to give you behind the scenes.
We are
we
2-0. Beautiful.
we literally had, instead of break the news, instead of looking to do something that was news related today, which then we thought we'd talk about Putin and Tucker Carlson, which is too big of, I can't even today. Like, we're going to go different. Instead, we brought up, because you brought up such beautiful idea. There's like, hey man, we just talked about this thing in the news last week. We don't even have to look. We've been looking at it all week together and seeing that these farmer protests in the EU they're getting concessions. They're getting their government to go, all right, we fucking heard you. We're not doing 30% tax this, and this, and then you're gonna have to do that, and then okay, less meat. You can't have meat production. Okay, we're conceding. The government will look for some small little angle that they can increase year by year or decade by decade until they get to where they are now, because that's the way they'll do it.
Yeah.
And don't ever bend, don't break, and grow food, make food, do whatever you want. And this is the behind the scenes. This is what we were going to talk about into Putin and Tucker, and we can't today. We're like already at like 30 plus minutes. We're like probably 40 minutes right now. And we had a real thing that kind of popped up right before the Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin interview, which like just dropped yesterday or the day before. It's just coming out. And we both seen the clips. There was this other thing that we both stumbled into, and it was weird because you stumbled into it before I sent it to you, and you're like, yeah, oh my God, wait until you hear the 5th hour. And I was like, what? Like, you already, like, I've turned you on to this podcast. It's called the Sean Ryan Show. You can find it on iTunes. You can find it on Spotify. I believe in even YouTube. Amazing podcast. We've talked about it on here before because he keeps having amazing guests and long form interview without commercial breaks that they have to do so often that it just like you can't even follow a big train of thought. This guy's really good at it, just like a lot of the other podcasts we've already spoken about here. But here we are. This last podcast just released on the Sean Ryan Show, number 95, with Joseph McGonigal. I love his name. Joseph McMoneagle is the way it's MONEAGLE. McMoneagle means one eagle, like mono eagle. This guy, 78 years old, the number one, described by him, and I'd already heard this previously, because we're talking about very sensitive things here. In the intelligence community, this guy was the number one remote viewer our U.S. government trained and used for decades. Left the government and then went on to be in private use of being a remote viewer for corporations and companies and people. And the government would still come back and be like, hey, what about this? He directly worked with Robert Monroe at the Monroe Institute in Virginia. Monroe Institute is a deep, we'll call it a laboratory of sorts, in the sense that it's all about psyche, the physical, or psychic. So psyche, psychic, the other dimensions, and how does ESP, how does telekinesis, how do these things like work? How can you train at this? I mean, yes, now some people are going, do you mean like the movie Men That Stare at Goats? I don't mean directly that, but subsequent to, yes, there are different, like Robert Monroe isn't the lead guy in Men That Stare at Goats. That's another whole group of gentlemen that were doing other psychic stuff that probably did use the Monroe Institute, because the Monroe Institute was so deep into really learning how to control the mind. Like
this guy's an astral traveler. Let's make sure we have that in there, because it's a really big part of this guy's story.
Yeah, he's a remote
no, I mean, I'm sorry, Monroe, Bill Monroe. Astral travel, okay. And
Bill Monroe, not Robert.
What the CIA called remote viewing. Yes. That's a big focus of what they teach at that school, at the Robert Monroe Institute.
Operation Stargate, it was called, or it had many different names.
One of the many names of what Joseph McMoneagle was doing was called Operation Stargate. It had a lot of different names that changed for various political reasons, but yeah, man, that guy was a remote viewer, so he would project his consciousness to all around the world to get intelligence for the United States Army.
Now, I heard of this stuff back in the 90s when this was part of the things where I went, oh, like I had lost my way. And I was like, I think that psychic stuff this is all bullshit. There's no God. I'd gotten further and further from the truth, we'll say. And I'd reached a point where like even probably psychic stuff was like, I was like, that's all hocus pocus. That's all bullshit. Like, fuck off, make money, fuck bitches. I think I'm far enough in. I can
There's a
say that
there's a
now.
20-something-year-old guy's view of the world for
Oh,
sure.
20, young 20, like 20-ish,
Yeah, and
view of
comically,
the
like the
world.
money we're making wasn't that good.
No, it wasn't, but it was like, yeah, but I just wasn't in good work. I was in this gnarly work. Like I was doing everything was gnarly. And then things did change for me. Things did change. And I remember there's this one moment. And most people would probably have such an incredible moment, like where they're like, it's real. I was doing something, loading boxes for something. I don't remember what it was for. We were helping somebody move or something. And I had an intuitive moment because I was coming out from behind a vehicle and I had headphones on, so I couldn't hear the world around me. And it was a time of day, we'll say noon, so there was no like shadows being cast or anything. But I knew I just stopped. I was coming around a truck where you could not see around the corner. I just stopped
Mhm.
and a car was flying by. Like it should
Mm.
never have gone by that corner at that fast, ever, ever, ever,
Mhm.
let alone with people moving about and all. And I stopped and they would have clipped me. Like on my
Whew.
path where I just was going, I just stopped. And it was like, why are you stopping? Like my ego went, why are you stopping? It's like, just stop for a second, chill. I stopped and chilled. That happens. And then I went, oh my God. And it was like, it was literally a huge release valve in my life because it was at that moment I go, no, this is all real. Like, like your intuition's real, bro. And like, it was a
Mhm.
conversation. This all happened internally. Nobody knows about any of this happened. And that was kind of a start for me, where I then find out about people like Joseph McGonigal eventually. You know, you
Mhm.
start to hear about, well, it's more about remote viewing. Who are these remote viewers? Russell Targ and these other names you'll start hearing as you go down. But it's also about aliens. Like, are there giants? Like all my whole world just started to expand back to childhood where I already had all this stuff. I already knew about it, understood it very well for a child.
Then
And
the Santa Claus moment happened and it started to get constrained.
that's when things fractured. That's
Things
when
went to shit that day.
yeah, things fractured, man. Oh, I cried like it went to shit too that day about Santa, bro.
11
I,
years
I,
old, I remember.
I cried like a kid that, like, wow. But it's like, oh my God, this kid's feeling a deep trauma right now. This is like, this kid's really like, you can make fun of him right now, but like, he doesn't even care because he doesn't see nobody else right now. He's literally like just caught in a, like all his dimensions collapsed. He's like, holy shit, there are fucking, oh my God, there are chemtrails. Like, but it was the opposite. I stopped believing the magic.
Yeah, and it's right that it was a traumatic moment, and you know, forget anyone who would say that they would forget anyone who would diminish that experience. And it's obviously stood with you, and we've talked about it a lot of times for a reason because it was a pretty big factor in your life. But here on that street in San Diego, you bounced back.
It was in it was North First Street in Surf City, New Jersey. But yes,
Oh, okay, all right.
I then soon after moved to San Diego and then had a continual experience with the other side, meaning things in like starting to learn about dimensions, consciousness, realities,
Hmm.
starting to learn that how like, oh, you can work with these, you can do that. And Psychic Eye Bookshop, shout out, La Jolla, California.
That place
Um,
is great.
just started finding books, just used bookstore, Pennywise Books, shout out, San Diego, California. Just finding like books and learning about the universe and learning about people like Joseph McGonigal. And then this week, you and I listened to a podcast that's 6 hours long separately. It took me 3 days. It probably took 8 hours for me to listen to it because I rewound so much. Did that happen to you?
Yeah, yeah. It's just like listening to the Putin interview. I would either have to pay really good attention or back it up. And Joseph McMoneagle interview was that. I was really, really when he was talking about the psychic phenomena of his life, when he's talking about more mundane things like, you know, working in Vietnam or whatever, I wasn't paying attention as closely. But for the things that were important to me, I really would do that same thing and just roll it back to make sure I heard correctly so that I could understand what he actually means and not overlay what I think he means.
Right. Like what are his words? Because my head's already started going. I've already
That's why
started
we
thinking
roll it
about that.
back. Yeah.
I'd roll it
That's
back. I'm like, whoa.
What are their words? Yeah, not
I remember there was a part I rolled back so many times because I thought I missed something and I
Mhm.
never did miss anything. And I rolled it back at least 12 times. It was
what was
yesterday.
it? What
It
was
was
you
the
roll back
it was
12 times?
he was talking about. Now we've already broken down who this guy is. He was a remote viewer, worked for the government. He was a G whatever. You know, he could have anything he wanted. He was literally a secret weapon that our government had. And I could not help. He talked about so much, but this is the moment. This is why we're here. I could not stop rolling back the part where like I'm like, wait, why did he go there? And he was like, oh, GPS coordinate. When he started talking about Mars,
Oh, that was so cool.
but you don't know he's talking about Mars in the beginning because they're
No, he
like,
just talks about it. Can we spoiler alert anyone who's listening? This is 5 hours into the goddamn interview. So I mean, if
this is actually earlier than that. The dimensions is like almost a 5 hour
oh, the
mark.
dimensions was five
A
hours.
little
Okay.
over 5 hours. He breaks down dimensions in another way where I feel like in the last 90 days, I've heard people break down dimensions, which you know me, I'm a dude that's on like, no, it's dimensions, it's frequencies, consciousness, realities.
I'm on
These are,
dimensions right now, bro.
and we all are. And he breaks down dimensions that part, but no, it was before that. He starts talking about, I think it's before, whatever. That's the spoiler. You don't know when it's coming. He is in the box, as he calls it. He's at the Monroe Institute in the box, which is a shielded box, completely like closed, but has a communication device they can talk to him and he can talk to out of it. So he's not like that's it.
It helps them with their practice of remote viewing, so there are less distractions. It's a closed, controlled space.
Yeah, and it's like probably has crazy amounts of metal and things like that to shield it. All these Faraday cages, probably shielding equipment, whatever. So he's in the box. He'd already been working for a while, and then he says, "Hey, some guys just showed up from the army. They have some stuff. Can you do it?" And he's like, "Yeah." And they go on to like put the envelope that has nothing in it, nothing written on it, in Robert Monroe's pocket. He puts it in his pocket. The guys are there, and Robert Monroe, through a speaker system, speaks with Joseph McGonigal, and it says, "Hey, they want you to remote view this coordinates, this GPS in my pocket. The coordinates on this. It's a GPS." And he says, "Okay." And now you got to remember, like, this is the dude with a thing in his pocket. Even if he told them the GPS coordinates, how would this guy know? Yes, this all could be fancified and lies, but this is what's happening in this controlled environment. And then he goes on to start describing pyramids that he doesn't understand. He's like, I don't even know how they could have pyramids this big. Then starts speaking about what he sees around the pyramid
Mhm.
and the size of things, and there was some type of a blast. And then there was this, these other things. So he's gets out of the box. I'm gonna let you listen to the details later. Gets out of the box and he says to Joseph, or no, I'm sorry, he's still in the box, I believe.
Mhm.
And Joseph, or no, does he? I think he's out. He gets out. Yeah, because this was like an hour and a half. He said he was tired. So he comes out. The army guys are there. He goes, "Hey man, so what did you want me to be looking at? Like, what is this that I was even viewing? Is this a new discovery?" And they're like, "Hey, Robert, has the coordinates in his pocket." And he has something in his pocket. So he pulls out the envelope, he opens it, and instead of coordinates, that's because a lot of times they go GPS coordinates. Instead of coordinates, it just said Mars 1 million BC.
It's so wild.
So 1,223,000 years ago. No, 1,002,023 years ago is what they were asking him to see on
Four,
Mars
four.
without him knowing about anything. And then he described pyramids, lost civilization, roads. Um, And then he goes on to prove it in a way where he goes to JPL Labs and then gets the photos eventually and blah, blah, blah.
Right, right, because there were pictures of the area that he was describing, and anyone who's been interested in the topic has seen those pictures too, because it includes the face on Mars, the pyramids on Mars, what appears to be roads and artificial structures. I was gonna say man-made structures, but maybe it's little green men. I don't actually know. But
He does actually talk about that too, but we'll leave that for the interview. We won't even talk about that.
yeah,
No
but
spoiler alert on of it.
not on that. But what was so great is that he had an experience where he described the situation, and then he went and he got copies of the pictures of the area he was asked to describe. And it's such a fantastic mystery, this whole thing of like, wait, it looks like a pyramid on Mars. Wait, it looks like a face on Mars. Then you have all these well-funded think tanks that will come up with all kinds of reasons why it's not a face, it's not a pyramid, it's all natural, and all that same horse shit you always get from think tanks, which are the most disappointing people ever. They're really smart and they get paid by the controlling ruling class to bullshit the rest of us. Shame. Shame on them. Anyway,
You obfuscators.
they're obfuscators. You know what they're doing? Obfuscating.
I want to get a sign that says no skating and then write obs you in front of it.
So, all right, look, here's one of my favorite little Mars nuggets. Can I tell you my favorite little Mars nugget?
Please.
All right. So, talk about obfuscating the reality of Mars. Agent Pine, if you were to make a guess, how would you know that there was once water on Mars?
How would I know that there was water if I didn't know now? Like, what would I look for?
Nah,
I
what have
guess
you been told?
I
Or whatever. Which, however you want to answer the question
how
is.
would I look for water on Mars? First of all, I don't know how we are even getting to Mars when we're not on the moon. But okay, sure. We have sent a rover that has survived everything and landed on Mars. And I think you would look for water erosion.
Well, yeah, you can. You could look at Mars from this planet and you could see riverbeds. You're like, oh, that's where the
Yeah,
river was. Mars had water on it.
I will say riverbeds are also water erosion, just so I could feel correct in this moment.
Brother, you are correct. You are 100% correct. And we're doing the thought experiment because it's fun. No, the water erosion is visible on Mars from here. You can look at Mars and be like, oh, there's a riverbed. There's whatever. The riverbed is the most important for this conversation. The other thing I'll ask you is, hey, what do they again, what do they tell us was the last time there was water on Mars?
I'm not sure. You're gonna
Well,
have to tell me
they
that.
say billions of years.
Okay.
There hasn't been water on Mars for billions of years. It's a long time. But
And
you
how
can
would they
look at,
know that? Yeah, but and how are they even going to know
well,
that?
that's right. How would they know? They wouldn't
How
know
would you
for
know
one.
that?
And two, it just goes to show you that their bullshit is they're obfuscating. I don't know if I want to see the truth or just the reality of what Mars is, but you could look at Mars right now and you could see that there's riverbeds on Mars where water has cut channels through the land. And at the same time, we're told by our establishment that there hasn't been water on Mars for billions of years. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the thing that ties it all together. There are dust storms on Mars. And you could tell from here or from the little satellites we have over that planet, you could tell that they have 70-mile-an-hour winds on that planet. 70-mile-an-hour winds pushing dust. In 100 years, it's going to erode things. In 1,000 and 10,000 years, it's going to erode Earth. And there's no way that a riverbed that was carved billions of years ago is going to survive dust storms with 70-mile-an-hour winds. It's just not even within the realm of possibility. That's how I know we're being bullshitted about what I think our establishment knows about Mars. They do know things about Mars, like the face, like the pyramids, like the roads, and you're fed some horse shit about, oh, we know everything there is to know about Mars. It hasn't had water in a billion years, but there's the riverbed because that's how we know there was water. And by the way, we have storms with 70-mile-an-hour winds. It doesn't hold water, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Pun intended. Uh, if this all seems like extremely fanciful, if this all seems wow, I don't know. This is a lot to take in. Mars. How do we know that? I'm gonna do the I'm gonna bring up the old as above, so below.
Hmm.
In this, Mars is the above. And I think that what we're looking at, you just have to look here. Just look here. Go to the pyramids. Go to the Sphinx. You can understand from Graham Hancock's studies that there's a certain there was a certain narrative, a certain story being told about the Sphinx and its age and how old the pyramids are and their age. And through the same techniques you're talking about with water erosion, there's
Hmm.
water erosion at the Sphinx. It's like, hey man, no, this water, there's no water was ever like this had to be some other event happened that made water do this. And then that they're allowed from that, they go back and say, okay, we have this at a different timeline. Like this Sphinx is much older than because there's water erosion at 9,800 years or it's 10,200
Yeah.
years, whatever it is.
The story doesn't hold water. The official story, it doesn't.
Inspiration point for Matt.
Thank you. Thank you.
Their story doesn't hold water, dude. Come on, bro. They're just writing the jokes right now. So yeah, this Mars is like, whoa, what? And then it's like, yeah, well, this is what we can look at things like this physical evidence in this rather grand thing we're talking about. The physical evidence helps show you, though, you know, it
Hmm.
you-
Help show
we,
you you're being bullshitted.
exactly. Yeah. Like if they're lying about the pyramids, you don't think they'll lie about Mars? And this isn't even just a bunch of people just being like, oh, they just no, we already know they've literally they've created a lie of almost everything. Most recently, they changed the calendar, hundreds of years ago. Within the last 100 years, they've created a new lie and said, oh, slavery is bad, as they create debt slavery with a system of money that's a usury system that preys on the entire society as a whole, a big giant whole. It's called the Federal Reserve. It's not
Hmm.
a bank that's owned by the government. It's a private bank that loans money to the government that the thing doesn't have. They just tell them like, yeah, and then you owe us this. You're going to owe us interest for that.
Hmm.
This whole thing in this last 100 years, this is where we've gotten to. And where we started was, like they're hiding things. And then they present this new reality for us, this reality of where right now at 2024, this reality of, oh, well, we're just going to have all digital money. We'll have all of you guys have lied about everything all along. And now we're supposed to trust you with the whole globe and that you'll do it right. Like you don't get private jets anymore. It's like everything you're trying to build for the world. We can't have a world that runs on electric cars. There's no way to build a system that could do anything within the realm that they're looking to do this. None of that can happen.
There's not enough third world child slaves in the world to supply enough cobalt and lithium
We
to
we
do all that.
we'd melt the
To say
system if
nothing
we
of
had
would you
electric
want the
cars.
damn slave in the first place?
Well, I mean, electric cars don't work in cold areas when it's cold. There's like, you can't, you got to try it. It's this whole thing. Listen, it seems way off from where we just started, but what I'm trying to show is we're presented this like, oh my God, technology is amazing. And this whole thing we're showing you right now is like, this is a good finished product and it's going to get better and we're going to refine it. They've lied to us all. They won't even tell you the truth about the goddamn pyramids of the Sphinx.
Right.
Then about the universe, then about Mars, about the origins of this planet, the ancient information that's been held down that we have that could release and give us free energy. And we could build for sustained amounts and we could go back to localized areas and do it the right way that we already know, but we're being presented a different way so that we're all being, held captive and not even being told what we're really even being held captive on. They don't even want you to know about dimensions, but here we are. It's being released. It's, we're entering the age of Aquarius and people like Joseph McGonigal are releasing the bombs, dude. They're releasing the bombs of
Yes.
information and knowledge.
And it lets us educate ourselves where you're not getting it from any establishment source or official source. You have to educate yourself.
It seems to be. It seems to
Yeah.
be, my brother. Well, listen, please go watch that video on Sean Ryan's show. He has some incredible, we've talked about this before. Search for other information. Check back with us. If you have questions, anything, hit us up on Instagram. Other than that, I'm just stoked to be here. Once again, greatest day of my life. Let's rock and roll.
All right. Best day ever. Great time talking to you, Agent Pine. Thank you,
Okay.
world. Appreciate you.